saying that the real poverty line, strategists argue it's a six-figure number. So they saying that six figures is the real number of poverty. Let's do this one. Let's do this one.
No, I have to say, I've always thought that the national poverty line was more of a political construct, right? Designed for politicians to say we've made progress, right? When they never really truly changed lives. Oh, the poverty line is here, and you're making a grand more. We've done you a big favor. Vote for me. Well, my next guest is taking this whole proposition to a whole new level, and everyone has a strong opinion about his Substack titled How a Broken Benchmark Quietly Brought America Down. Let's bring in now Simplify Asset Management, their chief strategist, Mike Green. My man. Golly, people are going nuts. First, I just want the idea of what made you even go down this rabbit hole.
Well, what actually sent me down this, we'd actually talked about a couple of the pieces that I've done before on this, where I was just candidly horrified by the reaction that we saw on Twitter to a right-wing influencer posting a somewhat inaccurate picture of a house saying in 1950 a single income could afford this, right? There was an incredibly coordinated and messaging backlash that basically boiled down to what possible right do you have to expect this? You're nothing, right? That
somebody said, Anton, do all of the stories. I will when I get back in the studio tomorrow morning. So we're going to be back to the regular Millionaire Morning Show. We'll probably do 7 or 8 stories tomorrow. But today I got to go and catch a flight in a couple hours, and so I got to leave in a little bit. But let's get into this. Let's focus.
Framework ultimately sent me down the path of saying, hey, wait a second, this is actually really missing something that people are trying to convey. And as I dug into the numbers, and I wrote this on my piece, I was candidly horrified because as somebody who comes out of the financial world, who has done very well and is incredibly appreciative for it, and whose children have been successful,
right?
I look at this and I'm like, this is something I never really spent a lot of time thinking about.
Right.
But the minute you dig into it, you discover that there's actually a terrible story.
So maybe you were living in an ivory tower and didn't know it?
I absolutely knew I was living in an ivory tower. My life is like, very few people have this.
The real math of survival, though. So we're talking about real survival, real poverty line. Child care, 32,000, housing, 23,000, food, almost 15,000, transportation, almost 15,000, healthcare, almost 11,000, other essentials, 22,000, add in taxes. You're saying the real poverty line is 140,000.
I got to try to get Mike Green on the show. I need him to explain this to me more in depth.
Essentially.
It is very close. And I want to just be clear that 140,000 doesn't mean you are literally poor, right? We're not talking about, country poor sort of stuff. What I'm describing there is that's really the threshold at which you can cover all of the expenses without government assistance and start saving.
I disagree. Well, let me not say I disagree. Let me break this down. 32,000 in child care. I got to have this conversation with him. I got to have a conversation with him because I need to understand where these numbers come from. Let's say housing, right? Let's say you're spending $23,000 a year on housing. That's reasonable. If you live in more than one person and you paying a little over $2,000 a month for 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, whatever, right? I'll give you that. I think your food costs is wild. I think childcare is wild. Transportation, wild. I'm not going to touch healthcare. Other essentials, I don't know what that is. I disagree. I think you can cut, 32. You can probably cut about at least $5,000 off of housing. So let's say 37, let's say 38. Let's round up to 38 because it's 32.7. Food, that's pretty crazy. $1,400, $1,300 a month in food, that's insane. Transportation, you can practically cut that out if you just get something that's paid for and you don't have a car note. Because you're saying transportation that people are spending the equivalent of $1,200, $1,300 a month in transportation? Come on, man. Come on, bro. Come on, dog. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it the same way that everybody else is seeing it. I'm not seeing it the same way that everybody else is seeing it. Why are y'all paying $32,000 a month in childcare? Y'all ain't got no memas? You ain't got no mimas? You ain't got nobody that's in your family that, because first of all, child care only should be child care up to the point that the child is old enough to go to school. So once they get 6, 7, 8 years old, you ready to get it back in. It's not like that, Anton. How's it not like that? I raised a child with no government assistance. Thank you, Crimson. I appreciate you, baby. I raised a child with no government assistance. You know what? You know what my chick used to do? Because we used to call them the baby mama club. we called our women the baby mamas, and it's because I have a huge family, and most of the girls was all having children around the same time, right? So my daughter is the same age as my brother's daughter. Um, they literally the same age. They're all around, not exact same age, but they're a little bit around the same age. Um, and then my other cousins, their sons and daughters are around the same age. So they all were grouped. And so we called them the baby mama club because it was already understood that if you had a child or if you was a woman that had a child in our family, that once you had that kid, that you couldn't work until the child became old enough to be able to go to school full time. So you could go to school, you could do this, you could do that, but it wasn't a working. And so the men just had to get that shit together. They had to step up. They had to grind. They had to hustle. You had to lower your lifestyle. And we called them the baby mama club because they would all do fun stuff together. They would go to the libraries. They would go on picnics. They would all meet up at each other's houses at least 4 or 5 times a week and all of this stuff. And so I am very thankful because my child has never, and when I say never, I mean never experienced daycare a day in her life because there was a community of women that all worked together. And if this person had to go do something, and oh man, I'll watch her. She can go and hang out with my kids. Oh man, I'll watch her. And so when I hear y'all talk, like the guy Mike Green, and shout out to him, because I think this is a very good conversation to have. When I hear him talk, I don't hear the way that I came up, the way that we was raised. I don't see that type of environment where the children were all a part of the community and everybody just had a good time and everybody went over grandma's house. We was, bro, y'all, like if you think about like the Sunday, the perception of what Sundays was, spending over Big Mama house, spending over grandma house. Do you know that was like every day for our family? Every single day. The women went over to grandma's house and stuff like that and prayed, ate together, partied together, all of this stuff. That was normal. They went over, bro. Y'all talking about Anton is 2026. Bruh, this was what, 2012, 13, 14, 15? Everybody went over everybody's house every day. All of our children was raised together. Wasn't no daycares and all of that other nonsense. Everybody was in the same space. They all went to school together. My daughter went to school with her cousins and her brother, all of that stuff. Everybody went to school together and everybody participated together. That was I don't get it, bro. I don't get it. I think that a lot of y'all are having children outside of an environment that's conducive for the child to be raised. Here's the bigger question. Why are y'all deciding to have children and you can't afford them? Why are you deciding to have children and you haven't built up a community? Why are you having children and you don't have a good man behind you? Why are you having children and you're not even getting yourself together yet? Because y'all saying, oh man, well, that was more than 10 years ago. Why are you still stupid in 2025 going into 2026? That's my question. Fuck what I'm talking about. You can agree with me or disagree with me. Why are you still being stupid if you know that you ain't got what I just named? So Everything has evolved, but you still dumb. Is that what you're telling me? Because if you asking me, if you saying to me, well, that was a long time ago, well, you haven't evolved in your thinking. You still think like the 80s when they was living in the projects. Why is it 42 million of y'all dealing with needing the federal government in 2025? What the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you have a child in an environment that you don't have no sense of community? You ain't got no income. You broke as fuck, but you fucking know, ain't you? I'm just asking. Because see, when my daughter was little, I didn't have a car note. I paid for a car at an auction and I drove that bitch until it had 350,000 miles on it. We wasn't trying to do it. I wasn't, I was wearing Levi's and I was in Air Force Ones and I was chilling. I wasn't trying to do Purple Label and Evisus or whatever the fuck y'all wearing and all of this stuff. I was so much because I understood that I had to put more into my family than I had into myself as far as like my shoes was clean. My gear was straight, but it wasn't super expensive. I didn't really start spending money until after my daughter was big as fuck. Why y'all still doing dumb shit is the question. This ain't an Anton problem. This is a you problem. Give me a fresh pair of Air Force Ones and some clean Levi's, and I'm straight. You ain't wearing nothing but t-shirts in the summertime anyway. I get the whole family. The whole family was fresh. You get a pair of Air Force Ones. You get a pair of Air Force Ones. You get a pair of Air Force Ones. What we talking about? It don't even cost that much. Man, I got videos of me taking my daughter school shopping. It wasn't that expensive. Everybody can get Air Force One. Shit, Levi's, they was selling them. You get two. If you buy two, you would get like, man, come on, bro. I still wear Levi's. I literally still wear Levi's. I still wear Levi's. Ain't nothing changed. It's still the same. The shoes might change. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna do the Versaces. We're gonna do Versaces now, but the shoes might be different. But the jeans are still the same. I think that this number is insane. I think this number is insane 100%. I think people are crazy.
Just be clear that 140,000 doesn't mean you are literally poor, right? We're not talking about, country poor sort of stuff. What I'm describing there is that's really the threshold at which you can cover all of the expenses without government assistance and start saving, right? Start preparing for your future. That's a very, very different place than most people think it is.
Now, obviously, people hit you and saying, and you talked about this a little bit in the piece, that, hey, it's a lot different in Mississippi than it is in Manhattan.
It's a lot different in Mississippi. And what's been so interesting to me is actually the anger and frustration and resentment of that number is typically coming from people who...
Somebody said, why does AD always have pants laying by him? Because in the house, I wear joggers. You know what I'm saying? Do you want to see my joggers? In the house, I wear joggers, big dog.
Don't have kids. Right? I see a lot of young, informed, intelligent commentators like, this is absolutely ridiculous. $32,000 for childcare. And in the meantime, the vast majority of my comments that are coming in are from people who are actually in that situation saying you're 100% right. This is exactly my experience.
The lies, the housing lie, the hedonic lie. What's the housing lie?
What up, Daniel Bernard?
Well, the story with the housing lie is this idea that you can afford to buy this house if you just be willing to settle. And this goes back to the piece that I wrote before. An individual had said, look, the problem is everybody expects larger houses today. They expect nicer houses today. Well, the reality is they expected that in 1955 as well. The homes that were being built at 1,100 to 1,200 square foot at that time period were dramatic improvements. Many people are now out saying 20% of the homes in 1950 didn't have indoor plumbing. 0% of the new houses in 1950 didn't have indoor plumbing. They were all being brought up to standards of the day. If you look at that exact same house today, it is nowhere near affordable. It is impossible for most families in a place like Essex County, New Jersey, which is the area that I was responding to in the initial post. Mm-hmm. They just can't afford it. There's nothing there for them.
The optical illusion of prosperity. What's that about?
Well, we absolutely have progressed as a society,
Right.
right? I'm sitting on this stage wearing very nice clothes and warm air conditioned or warm
That is
HVAC
based
serviced
off New Jersey.
environment. My life,
Jersey notoriously have some of the highest property taxes in the country, but we'll get there.
life is dramatically richer and better than my grandfather's life was. But the reality is that base level of participation, the level at which I can start to contribute and start to benefit from how society has improved, has risen alongside that.
I'm gonna continue this conversation in the morning because I got more to say about this. So we're gonna start off with this conversation on the Millionaire Morning Show in the morning, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be absolutely a hoot.